You can look across all of the largest public equities, and that includes all of the Bitcoin miners in our space. BlackRock has, I would say a top 5 position in almost all of the public companies in our space. They invested through a convertible note back in 2021. They've been a strong supporter of the industry. They've been a strong supporter of Core.
This content is brought to you by Uphold, which makes crypto investing easy. I've been a user of Uphold since 2017. They're one of my go-to exchanges. You can buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrencies on Uphold. You can also trade precious metals and equities. They have 10 plus million users, 250 plus cryptocurrencies, and they're available in 150 countries. As with all exchanges, you can buy and sell on them, but I highly recommend you custody your own crypto. Not your keys, not your coins. If you'd like to learn more about Uphold, please visit the link in the description. Welcome back to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is Adam Sullivan, who's the CEO of Core Scientific, which is one of the largest Bitcoin miners in North America. Adam, it's great to have you on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This should be a good time.
Adam, let's start with your background. Tell us about yourself and your professional background.
Sure. So I joined Core Scientific in May of this year. Before Core Scientific, I spent the last decade in the financial services industry, mainly in investment banking, with a focus on the digital assets and infrastructure industry. I was managing director and head of digital assets and infrastructure at XMS Capital. Worked on numerous M&A projects, capital raises in this space, including Core Scientific's business combination with XPDI.
And what was your first encounter with Bitcoin, and what was your aha moment?
Yeah. I was working for a hedge fund in New York in 2016. The person who sat next to me, the trader who sat next to me, was very into crypto. He'd actually talked to me about Bitcoin back in 2011. And in 2016, I decided to start mining ETH. It was something that I could do in my apartment. Incredible power bills in Brooklyn at the time. I was setting, I think, new records for what a single 2-bedroom apartment could be doing at the time. But I started visiting mining sites, and that was when, the first time I visited, what was considered large scale at the time. It was about a 5 megawatt Bitcoin mining farm, converted facility. Just looking at the amount of infrastructure that was being redeveloped in many areas that lost a lot of jobs. That was kind of one of the biggest moments for me. I saw it as a transformation for a lot of parts of this country that had, really been affected by, you talk about Alcoa leaving many of their sites, paper plants shutting down, all these different areas of industry, was giving life, where Bitcoin mining was giving life back to a lot of these places. And that was kind of the big moment for me where I realized, this is a great industry. I want to be a part of it. And ever since, I've been working in the Bitcoin mining industry.
That's amazing. I mean, you were mining in your apartment in Brooklyn, and now you're a CEO of a Bitcoin mining company. That's pretty amazing. So tell us about Core Scientific, and tell us about the business history and the services and different things that you have going on.
Sure. So Core Scientific is one of the oldest Bitcoin mining companies in North America. What we do best is we transform energy into high value compute. As many people know, we've built already 700 megawatts of infrastructure for Bitcoin mining, which has been one of the most profitable areas of emerging compute. We've had other aspects to our business as well. More recently, we actually sold an AI division to AMD. But for context, the 700 megawatts is large, right? 6 years ago, when I first entered the industry, there was no 100 megawatt sites. Industrial scale at the time was 5 megawatts, 10 megawatts. So it's been incredible to see the development, throughout this industry. But more importantly and more specifically at Core, we've been able to assemble a team that's been able to build essentially large cities worth of infrastructure for Bitcoin mining.
Mm.
It's a very unique capability set that our team has. We've been continuing to develop new infrastructure. You look at from iteration one of our facilities back in 2017 to what we're building today. The strides that we've made in developing new infrastructure for this space in particular has been incredible. I mean, we're operating about 205, 206,000 machines. About 145,000 of those are ours.
Mm.
And it's incredibly difficult to maintain high levels of uptime, high levels of efficiency at that type of scale. But we've been able to bring together, a very unique set of individuals to help us build what I think is the premier infrastructure in this industry. We went public back in January of 2022. And now we're looking at reemergence coming up here, hopefully hopefully in Q4 of this year.
And where are your mining locations across North America, and what type of energy sources are you using?
Yeah, so we have 7 facilities across 5 states. So we're in North Dakota, we're in Georgia, Kentucky, Texas, and North Carolina. I like to think about our mining facilities in a similar way to, let's just say they had 1 miner or 2 miners. If you have 2 miners and one goes down, then 50% of your fleet is down. However, when you move to 5 miners, if one goes down for any different reasons, it's much lower hit to your overall efficiency. That strategy for us looks like that on a much larger scale. So, having 7 facilities, that means that high temperatures in one area might not affect, another site, or curtailments, for example. Obviously, Texas is constantly in the news about curtailments. Having that distribution of power markets is incredibly important for us. You had a question there about, power sources. Our operations are all grid source power. So our sites are as green as the grid is, but as renewables continue to increase across almost every grid in the United States, it's natural for miners who are attracted to the lowest cost power, renewables being that lowest cost marginal power. Miners are naturally attracted to places that have high degrees of renewables infiltrating their grid. And so for us, that's what we've been focused on since inception, is finding those pockets of power, that's cheap power. And frankly, all of our grids across the United States are getting more and more green. And that's going to help lower our power cost over time.
And I'm assuming that your mining operations, as you mentioned, is you're getting your power from the grid. You may go off at certain times, depending on if the grid is overloaded, if you want to call it that, depending on natural causes, weather, whatever it may be. I'm assuming you're working with the local folks there accordingly.
Yeah. We're a top 10 customer in every power market that we operate. So not only are we very interested in working very closely with our power companies, but our power companies work very closely with us because they recognize that, we provide unique capabilities. And we're seeing this in some of our markets today where, they didn't have credits for intermittent power. They didn't realize that the advantages that could be brought to their grid by having someone turn off what looks like a small city's worth of power, within a few minutes. And so we've spent a lot of time over the last, 6 years as a company continue to educate our power providers. Since I've joined, I've seen numerous presentations to power companies that we are not working with, but it's about giving them the best information possible so that they're more informed, so that their local community is more informed, because it helps everyone in this industry. Even if it doesn't help just us, if it helps others as well. Bitcoin miners are not competitors against each other in reality. We're kind of all working together to secure the Bitcoin network. And really, there's no necessary advantages between us and another Bitcoin miner in terms of, taking an individual location and be able to put up additional hash rate. Obviously, it's an area where we have, we lose a percentage of the overall network as more miners come online. But we're at the point today where, we need this industry to survive. We need to have our politicians be more informed, and we want to inform our local communities. So we welcome good actors in this industry at all times.
For sure. In regards to the amount of Bitcoin you're mining, tell us about that. And also, are you ramping up for the Bitcoin halving that's coming up in 2024?
So we've mined 10,730 Bitcoin to date. That's just self-mining. We mined 965 in September. So yeah, pretty significant numbers. When you compare us to our peers, we're still double-digit percentages above our nearest competitor. We're operating over 700 megawatts today, so it's a very unique business in terms of our scale. We've been at this size. We actually were a touch larger at the end of 2022, but we presented to the world a growth plan, a much more measured growth plan going out through 2026 that shows our continued market leadership in this area. So for us, it's the growth and the current operations for us, put us definitely among, if not the market leader over the next few years.
Now, you mentioned 2022. In December 2022, Core Scientific filed for bankruptcy. Can you tell us about that? What happened? How did the business end up getting in this situation, and what's the restructuring plan?
Yeah, of course. As with other miners in this space, there was a specific focus on growth from the end of 2020 through kind of middle of 2022. All Bitcoin miners were focused on growth. For us, that was, I would say definitely a core part of our business plan, was to be the largest miner in North America. In pursuit of being the largest miner in North America, which we have been, over the past, 6 years, we took on a significant amount of short-term debt, which in an industry that's volatile, that makes you very susceptible to short-term Bitcoin price fluctuations, which to ever say that Bitcoin is not volatile would be incorrect. But we got hit also with increased power costs related to Q3 and the beginning of Q4 of last year, that led us to filing for reorganization under Chapter 11 in December. You can look at our investor reports, our monthly updates, our filings. We've continued to operate as a business. We've been working with our advisors, both legal and our investment banking firm, on a proposed business plan. We've put that out. We actually filed publicly a business plan back in June of this year. We believe it presents a very measured growth plan for post-emergence that is very easily executable on. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize about Core Scientific is, we spent a lot of money on growth back in 2022 and even 2021 for projects that take 12 to 24 months to complete. And we're at the point now where we have a significant amount of partially developed infrastructure on the ground. We have 372 megawatts of partially developed infrastructure, which position us very well for our emergence. We have a great opportunity for growth at very reasonable prices post-emergence, and that gives us a very, very strong competitive advantage from our perspective to continue to operate at the highest levels of efficiency and in what we believe are the world-class mining facilities.
And there was news reported that BlackRock made an investment in Core Scientific and provided a $17 million loan. Can you tell us about that relationship and how it came about and how you guys are working together?
Sure. You can look across all of the largest public equities, and that includes all of the Bitcoin miners in our space. BlackRock has I would say a top 5 position in almost all of the public companies in our space. They invested through a convertible note back in 2021. They've been a strong supporter of the industry. They've been a strong supporter of Core, and they continue to be a strong supporter through the bankruptcy process. We can't say enough about BlackRock. They've been a strong aid to the industry, right? They're working on the ETF. They continue to invest in all of the Bitcoin mining companies in our industry. They're supporters of the crypto industry. And for me in particular, I couldn't be happier about having someone like that be an advocate for us.
So with the investment and working closely with your team, you mentioned, BlackRock is trying to get a spot ETF along with a bunch of other folks. The line is growing every day. Is BlackRock sourcing Bitcoin from you folks? Since as a miner, you're producing these Bitcoin, is that something that's taking place?
Right now, I can't say that BlackRock's sourcing Bitcoin from us directly. To be frank, I don't know where necessarily they're going to be sourcing their Bitcoin from. I would assume it would be from the numerous OTC desks across the industry. There's really no advantages to buying Bitcoin directly from miners, unless there is a strategy sometime in the future to have what they call virgin Bitcoin, which there's always been rumors that there's going to be a premium for it. I believe that is yet to be seen playing out in the market.
For sure, yeah. And I'm always curious about that. It would seem logical that if they are invested in miners such as yourself, they could do that, but who knows, right? Because it just depends on their strategy. Now, there was also recent news that Bitmain was planning to invest $54 million in Core Scientific. Tell us about that and what's the plans there?
Yeah, I mean, we have a really close relationship with Bitmain. I believe we bought over $1 billion worth of equipment from Bitmain over the course of the past few years. So, we're both strong supporters of the Bitcoin network. Bitmain, they come out and at World Digital Mining Summit, they had mentioned, they're here to support and strengthen the Bitcoin network. That's a goal of ours as well. So for us, we're obviously a very close customer, and Bitmain's a key supplier to our business today. So Bitmain, as part of our emergence, is giving us a transaction where we're purchasing 27,000 machines. Those are the newest generation of the S19 XP, and we're going to be upgrading a portion of our fleet utilizing those machines. So utilizing some open capacity as well as refreshing some of our existing machines to increase our overall hash rate, potentially up to about 4.1 exahash. And that deal is structured so that 54 million is done in equity at plan value. So whenever plan value gets set, they will be receiving a portion of Core Scientific worth $54 million. The other part of the transaction is a $23 million cash payment that we'll be paying alongside of a delivery schedule of those 27,000 machines. And frankly, it's a deal that we couldn't be happier about. I would have to imagine that we'll see similar types of transactions occur in this industry, whether it's Bitmain, whether it's other suppliers or other manufacturers. There's going to be a tendency for this continued integration between manufacturers and miners. It's a natural kind of shift in our industry. You take this back a few years in 2021, there was all of this talk of mergers within the industry, peers merging together, whether that be kind of some of the mid-market players, the mid-cap players in our industry, combining forces. I don't think we're necessarily going to see much of that occur. Obviously, we've seen, one transaction between a public and a private company occur more recently, but many of the largest public miners today are going to look at integrating further with manufacturers over the integration with other peers in this industry. And so I think, this is definitely a landmark deal for our industry in that regard. It's the first one of its kind. But do I think it's necessarily going to be the last one for this industry? I think it's a wait and see today.
Now, are there plans to build additional mining locations across the U.S. and even go international?
For Core Scientific?
Yes.
Yeah, so for us, I mean, we perform RFPs constantly because we are always trying to find pockets of power throughout, whether it's North America or whether it's internationally. Um, this game is a power game in reality. You're constantly searching for the best combination of low cost power married with intermittency. And so we're constantly evaluating the industry, evaluating the market, evaluating new opportunities. But today in our growth plan that we've outlined publicly, we have a significant amount of infrastructure already partially developed. I mentioned earlier we have 372 megawatts partially developed infrastructure at two of our existing sites. So that's our Denton facility in Texas, as well as our Cottonwood facility in Texas. And so we have that power approved from ERCOT, fully greenlit. We have a number of those buildings already almost complete. So for us, that's very cheap infrastructure for us to complete from here on out. That average cost is about 200,000 a megawatt for the next 372 megawatts. So well below industry standards, and that's inclusive of power or power infrastructure that's inclusive really of everything. Which it's always hard to decipher in this industry exactly what people are including their cost to build per megawatt. But that's all in cost for us because a significant amount of dollars have already been put in the ground on those long lead items. So 372 megawatts take us, to about 1.1 gigs of power. That's a pretty significant amount of infrastructure dedicated to the Bitcoin network. But we're proud of it. We're proud to continue to support the Bitcoin network and continue to grow as a company.
With the Bitcoin halving coming up next year, I believe in April 2024, I wonder if you could take us behind the curtain a bit. How are you planning for that? Given that the supply will be cut, are you kind of ramping things up, trying to mine as much as possible?
This is a question that we receive often. And I think oftentimes a lot of people who have never been through a Bitcoin halving are listening intently to an answer here. Halvings are not one-time events. We've been through them before as a company. It's a position you have to take as a business at all times. This business is about managing volatility. It's about time and market. It's about preparing for downside volatility in particular. The halving event represents an identified downside volatility event. So for us, we think about managing that trade-off between total terahash exposure and the efficiency of the machines compared to the market. So when you're evaluating the halving, you have to constantly be thinking about how you manage your machine portfolio to be as profitable as possible. So for us, we have 7 facilities. They represent all different power markets, all different types of uptimes, intermittency, et cetera. But what we did was we actually built an internal tool that takes in forward power curves. It takes into account curtailment programs, weather data, and a few other variables, and it projects profitability of all of our machines, and it essentially goal seeks for the best place for each of those machine types to be in each location. So at a high level, what that ends up taking you to is it takes your less efficient machines and moves them to locations in your portfolio where there's lower cost, potentially more intermittent power, and then locating the more efficient machines at sites that give you more stable uptime. So it's not necessarily about just trying to ramp up capacity as quickly as possible prior to the halving. It's about preparing for the next 5 years because, if you want to be in business 5 years, 10 years in the Bitcoin mining business, you have to be positioning yourselves to survive significant downside volatility. Obviously, we've gone through the process of not managing for that downside volatility well. And so for us, it's about positioning ourselves to be the market leader in positioning yourselves for downside volatility.
Oh yeah, that absolutely makes sense. From a business standpoint, to your point, you probably get a lot of those questions. People are just thinking, get as much Bitcoin as possible, but you're a business, you have to be profitable. You got to think about the long term. So that absolutely makes sense. Obviously, you mentioned building out the additional facilities and the unfinished facilities as well. Is there anything else on the roadmap for the remainder 2023 as well as 2024 you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think for us, it's, step one is emergence. Publicly talked about our emergence plan in Q4 of this year. We're still on track to exit before the end of this year, which would be a huge milestone for us as a company. We've been in this process now for about 10 months. And it's a process that wears people down. The good news is we haven't taken our eye off the ball in terms of improving our efficiency. And the process has really given us an opportunity. When you spend, 5 years focused purely on growth, you have to take a step back at some point and reevaluate all of the infrastructure you have, all the technology that you built, and merge it all together to ensure that you have the most cohesive operation. That's something that we've had the opportunity to do over the last 10 months that a lot of other companies haven't had that opportunity as they've been thinking about growth, thinking about all these other things. The good news is we kind of went through those growing pains earlier than a lot of other companies will go through them. And so from our standpoint, we've done full engineering reviews of all of our facilities. We've worked through ways to further integrate our tech stack into our operations. We're one of the few companies out there. We developed all three layers of the tech stack for mining, which is very unique. We've developed our own fleet management, developed our own firmware, and developed our own energy management software. We've integrated all of them. That's something very unique in the industry. And so for us, it's going to look, we believe in 2024, it's going to look very strong for us. We're going to have opportunities that a lot of other companies haven't had the opportunity to do. And so I think that's what we're most excited about. More measured growth, greater efficiency, and greater highlighting the software stack that we built for our company. And I think it highlights how we've been a market leader over the past few years. And I think it's really going to, highlight and showcase the fact that we will continue to be a market leader going forward.
Now, with Bitcoin mining seeming to be booming in the United States, and years ago, China had banned Bitcoin mining. A lot of miners went to different parts of the world. Many came to the United States. Are you, on the business side, hearing anything from the regulators as far as regulations for the Bitcoin mining industry? They haven't banned anything. I don't think they've said anything negative. There are the people who run with narratives and FUD and talking about energy, but yet the industry is booming. Like you mentioned, a lot of jobs being created locally in areas where jobs have left and went overseas, or things have gone out of business. So how are you looking at that? And are there any concerns, or you're pretty optimistic that it seems like things are going to be pretty good for Bitcoin mining in the United States?
I feel like every day I wake up and there's a new discussion point about regulating Bitcoin miners. For us, we've worked really closely with all of the regulators, both on the local level, state level, and also at the federal level. We're spending a lot of time trying to ensure that there's the correct messaging and the correct education that goes on around this industry. It's not just Bitcoin mining. It's across the industry. It's DeFi, it's Bitcoin more broadly. It's really all of this industry has such a strong focus. I think you see Brian Armstrong, marching on Capitol Hill, feels like monthly at this point. If we check his Twitter feed, he's probably back there again. But for our industry in particular, I think a lot of people are coming around, especially at a local level, and saying, this is good for our community. This is good for our state. There's obviously always going to be some question marks around power usage, power consumption. I think that's going to come down to educating, local communities and a lot of people at the state level, so that people understand exactly how we interact with the grid. The problem isn't as in our industry and as in other industries, there's always some bad actors that end up getting targeted in the news. But we always try to be the good actor in every place that we are. We try to interact with our local community. We try to highlight the fact that, we want to be good in this community, in this industry. And I think that's an important part that a lot of people miss when they read headlines that are negative about individuals, individual companies. But the truth of the matter is, we're all out here, in our hearts to do good. trying to have a good company, trying to be the best place that people want to work. And so I'm not that, I would say I'm not that concerned about regulations, because I think by the time additional regulations come down the pipeline, I'm very hopeful that people will be more educated on the benefits that we bring to the local communities.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we're seeing the states leading a lot of the conversations with that. You mentioned there's been a lot of support. I know out of Texas, I've spoken to Congressman Pete Sessions and the different folks in different areas, and many are supporting Bitcoin mining and recognizing the benefits. What are your thoughts on the larger adoption of Bitcoin across the globe? Obviously, El Salvador made it a legal tender. We're seeing some central banks looking to use it as reserves. And this seems, companies are obviously putting on their balance sheet as well, that the adoption and the growth of wanting Bitcoin is growing. Obviously, BlackRock and these folks want to get a Bitcoin spot ETF. What are your thoughts? And do you see in maybe 5 years this is going to be way more Bitcoin adoption as well?
Yeah, man, I think we're still in the early innings. The main parts of the world where Bitcoin has been adopted initially were mainly first world countries. A lot of corporations have been evaluating Bitcoin on their balance sheet, as you mentioned. That is going to continue to grow, but as Bitcoin continues to be utilized throughout other countries that are not just necessarily, I would call them, the top first world countries, I think that's when you're really going to start to feel Bitcoin being more common. The fact I still get questions from my parents, even though I've given them too many crypto books to count, questions about crypto and about Bitcoin. Once they see it being utilized more often, I think one of the biggest areas that we're going to see it start to be utilized more often. In fact, there was just a conference there, is Africa. Obviously, Africa, South America, Latin America, all of these different places are beginning to adopt Bitcoin in a way that we haven't seen before. We haven't seen the uptick in terms of usage, but today we're finally seeing people say, "Yeah, bring Bitcoin mining to our community. We want to use Bitcoin in our local community." Those are all positives for this industry. I think you take the other side of that, which is corporations putting more Bitcoin in their balance sheet. I think it's a very interesting strategy. I think for some of that, it's about treasury management. Core Scientific in 2022 is actually one of the largest holders of Bitcoin on their balance sheet of any corporation. So I think some of that's going to have to come around a more measured approach, but I see Bitcoin's success in individuals using it across the world, not just corporations putting it on their balance sheet.
And speaking of the usage across the world and more people using on a day-to-day basis, there are those that are working on the Lightning Network and a layer 2 scaling solution. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think Bitcoin, great store of value, digital gold. I hold Bitcoin, right? I'm using it as a hedge for the most part. What do you think? How do we get to that day to day? And it's part of. I don't know if the Lightning Network is a solution or there's something else. But what are your thoughts around that?
I think the Lightning Network is a great solution for a lot of more day to day use cases. Do I think it's the end all be all? I think it's yet to be seen. I mean, the increase in usage of the Lightning Network has continued, and we're seeing more innovative solutions being built on it. So I think that's a place actually where it could become much more, I would call it, transactional focused in terms of Bitcoin. We're seeing interesting use cases even in the Bitcoin mining space around the Lightning Network related to making payments to energy companies. All of those things just continue to, I would call it, propagate, the usage of Bitcoin for more common types of transactions. That's outside of store of value. So, Lightning Network definitely, it will continue to grow. And I think we're going to continue to see other types of strategies come to the surface over the course of the next 10 years. We're early innings still, right? I don't know how many years Lightning Network's been around, but it's not many when you think about the overall, Bitcoin network. And when you think about how long it took for other currencies to really take themselves to a global stage. So for me, I think we're early innings, but all of these things are great additions to the Bitcoin network, and we'll just continue the usage across the globe.
Kind of a random question for you.
Sure.
What do you think about, and this may be once again early as well, AI being used to help manage Bitcoin money may make it more efficient? I don't know, all the details and in what ways, but is that something you guys are looking to, in the future or thinking about, or is it still very early?
Yeah. So this is there's been some papers written about this. AI is not going to necessarily dramatically influence, I would say, the direct Bitcoin mining, solving the algorithm, but AI is definitely an area, and we're utilizing machine learning techniques for improving the efficiency of our facilities. So that's definitely a space that we'll continue to utilize, especially as more data is being collected on the mining industry. We have sensors across our hot aisle, our cold aisle. We're measuring pressure, we're measuring wind speed, we're measuring all these different variables across our facilities, and we're able to optimize our facilities based on all of that data using machine learning algorithms. So for us, that's really important. But do I think AI is going to rapidly improve our ability to mine? I don't think that's necessarily in the near future.
Got it. Yeah. Probably a ways off from that until it gets to, more, if I don't know, adoption or more commercialized AI that could help. I don't know, but we'll see. As far as the Bitcoin you're mining, how are you custodying that? And I don't know if you can tell us who your custodian you're working with. How does that Bitcoin, once it's mined, get moved to the custodian?
From an OPSEC perspective, I don't know if that was a trick question, but you'll never find out where we're custodying our Bitcoin. I will say it's in cold storage, and it takes a large number of individuals to move a single Bitcoin for a reason.
So that is a generally curious, out of curiosity that I'm asking that, because I'm always curious how the inner workings of the Bitcoin miners and how everything moves and goes. But I understand for privacy security reasons, you can't give too much information out. What are your thoughts on, out of Bitcoin, birthed the entire crypto industry, if you want to call it that. And there's NFTs, Metaverse, DeFi, tokenization, and much more. What are your thoughts on how this ecosystem has grown?
It's been great to see. In my previous role, we worked with a number of different companies in the DeFi space, in the NFT and Metaverse space. All of these areas are still early innings, as I mentioned earlier, related to, that was more of a comment on the Bitcoin network, but DeFi is very early innings. We have opportunities in DeFi that are very unique. I know they've had their own headwinds over the course of the past year. Regulatory concerns is probably a big one on the DeFi side that I would say is going to be the biggest headwind for them over the course of the next 5 years. But it's very interesting from the perspective that we have finally an opportunity to actually build essentially deregulated banks that don't necessarily require doing business with some of the larger banking institutions. And I think that's more targeted not only to individuals, but it's mainly targeting developing countries that want to have access to financial institutions that don't necessarily have that today. On the NFT side, on the Metaverse side, I think it's an incredibly interesting beginnings of something that I think will continue to grow. I think the Metaverse side, obviously, I saw an article recently about how there was only, I forgot what it was, a handful of individuals that were regular users in one of the major metaverses. I think that's going to continue to grow, especially in the gaming space. I think that's something that we've underestimated today about what that looks like in the future. But you look at how big gaming is today, it's only going to continue to grow. I think that's a similar use case for NFTs as well, where that's going to be an early an early taker to, and I think that we'll see true metaverse games over the course of the next 5 years in a bit more of a commercial way than what we're seeing today.
Well, I have to ask, did you see the interview with Mark Zuckerberg and Lex Friedman recently by any chance?
Oh, I haven't seen it. What happened?
Okay. So it is pretty incredible. In the past, everybody was laughing at Zuck and all the money he's lost on his Metaverse 1.0, if you want to call it that. It is pretty incredible. Highly recommend you check it out. It shocked me. I was surprised, like, wow, they made a lot of progress. So it seems they're getting there where it's more reality based, and the face and everything is scanned, and it's incredible. So I think we'll probably have more users of the metaverse eventually once, as it becomes more immersive and realistic. But that was pretty incredible. Definitely check that out.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. It sounds interesting. I'm not surprised. I mean, the amount of money that's being spent on developing their metaverse is incredible. It trumps what most other companies can spend in a single year. So I'm very hopeful that they could be a leader there. It would only help increase the adoption and hopefully increase the amount of users in crypto as well.
For sure. Well, since we're talking about metaverse, one of my wrap-up questions for you is, if you could create your own metaverse, what would the theme be? Where would Adam go?
I would probably, if it was a metaverse that I created, it would probably be a metaverse for sports.
Nice.
It'd be really interesting to be able to interact with athletes, and also be able for people to create their own characters, compete against real athletes. I think that would be a really interesting opportunity in the metaverse space. I think some of it's already been worked on in the past, but I'm a big fan of MLB The Show, so make me a metaverse for that. I'll see you there.
And then I got some rapid fire questions there for you. Favorite food?
Ooh, Pontillo's Pizza in Rochester, New York.
Favorite musician or band? It's good. I have to check that out. I'm not far, so.
Well, it's a 6-hour drive for you, but it's in Bushnell's Basin. Get the buffalo chicken pizza. It'll change your life.
Awesome. Favorite musician or band?
Ooh, I would have to say Jay-Z. I feel like a 12-year-old on Little League shows, but yeah, it still is.
Favorite movie?
Ooh, Zoolander.
Favorite book?
I would have to say Dune. The Dune series, they were all good.
I've seen the movie, but I haven't read the book, so I'll have to check that out.
Oh, you're missing out. The movie didn't do it justice. I hate to say it, but once you read book one, I've suggested it to a number of people, and then they'll message me and be like, "All right, I'm on book 4." I'm like, yeah, that's what happens. You get sucked in pretty quickly to the Dune series.
I'll definitely have to check that out. When you're not working at Core Scientific, what are you doing for fun as a hobby?
Playing squash.
Nice.
Took it up after college, but nothing gives you a better workout, and you can get the crap beat out of you by any people, young or old, and it's fun to play.
Awesome. Adam, pleasure chatting with you. Exciting to see future updates around Core Scientific, but thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.